In this video, we will give a brief overview of the composition of the Formwork tools to get a basic understanding of how they are set up. For each type of placing tool, there is a main tool or dialog to work from. These tools can also be found in the Modeling ribbon under the Formwork tab and in the Applications and Components catalog. All of these fields are read from configuration files, like the supplier, families, and options that you see in the dialog. The configuration files are available out of the box and are stored in system folders. When creating new configuration files, it is recommended to place these in the model folder in a folder named Formwork Tools, which is not created by default. For your own future use, the configuration files can be placed in the firm or project folder. Configuration files must be a CSV type and must have a specific suffix. The prefix of the files can be named whatever you desire, and it's best organized if the same systems have the same prefix for the files that work together. CSV files are most user-friendly when used in Excel. You may notice when you open the CSV file, it'll appear messy and can be really difficult to work with. Excel will only format a CSV using a separator defined for Windows, which is by default a comma. To adjust this setting, change the list separator to be a semicolon. Now when you open the CSV file again, there will be convenient formatting to allow for easier editing. In this video, we won't cover creating CSV files, but we'll show you the common basics of what's inside of these configuration files. In all of the CSV files, there are column headers that define a specific property. All config files specify a supplier and family that are in the primary drop-down menu at the top of the dialog. Under each tab, there will be a name for the option. And for that option, a custom part is specified along with an attribute of that custom part. If the attribute field is left blank, the standard attribute or default properties will be used. If the custom part is parametric or uses variable input, there are also fields where those variables can be defined. Positions are to define the plane, rotation, and depth offset for the custom part. Besides these mentioned properties, each configuration will vary slightly and will be covered more in depth later. Custom parts are required to create along with the configuration files. Inside of those custom parts or components are items and parts. Items are imported if their geometry has been created in external software, or you can create these items in Tekla. In the component, the product data is referenced from an external file, and this can include properties like a product code, weight, description, and are written to user-defined attributes of the items to appear in reports, drawings, and for your use in filters. Here's a quick look at some of the components that would need to be created. Besides timber, all of the custom parts are using items. This first component is the panel. This component is unique because it has 3 items for the frame, face, and text for the panel size. And it uses variables for the height and width, which can be used with the configuration files. The next component is a very basic custom part and only places a single item. This component can be used in many configuration files to place a whaler clamp, tie, lock, or panel item. The attributes saved from the component dialog can then be specified in those configuration files. The tie component is another which uses the width of the wall to determine the appropriate tie length. A brace component will be another useful custom part. The unique aspects of this component is the bracing length is determined by the start and end point or yellow and magenta handle. Notice how the parts move as one end is moved. A clamp type component can be useful for devices that have varying widths. There's an input variable for the filler dimension, which can be specified in the configuration file. And in this component, it moves one of the items. For conditions that use timber panels, this component can adjust based on the wall thickness and height. This component uses specific variables like FPT thickness 0 so when it's placed at a condition, it is parametric with the wall thickness. We'll dive into the specifics on this in another video. The last component is not a specific type, but an example of another unique custom part that might need to be created. These are required when a single formwork assembly or connection includes many different items at a lot of different random locations. To review, we have the Formwork Tools application, and this tool will read the CSV files to display options in the dialog. And the configuration files are defined which custom parts to place and how to place them. In the component are the 3D objects and the product data referenced from an external file. The path then to create this content is to start at the end of this trail, which is defining the products and creating the items. Then you would create the custom parts, and then we can create the configuration files which specify those custom parts. Then you can either save your content to your firm folder or upload content to the Tekla warehouse. That concludes the content for today's presentation. In other videos, we will go into more detail on creating components and setting up configuration files. Thanks for watching.